Hi everyone, I'm Daniel, and today I'm going to do a little bit of a deck retrospective of some of my favorite decks that I played this calendar year 2024. Now, back in I think July or so, I did a little bit of this as well, showing some recent standalone and campaign decks that I had played. I'm not going to show those again here because go watch those videos. I'll link them down in the description below. But I just went through the decks that I built for this year. I've played a lot of different investigators. I play a lot of this game, probably not as much as some people though. And I just wanted to share some of the decks that you probably didn't see here on the channel. Most of them are not ones that I played here recorded on the channel. So let's go ahead and get started with the most recent deck that I played. I actually finished a campaign with Ursula Downs yesterday. So here she is. This was a very weird deck, and I love making weird decks. That's why I play the game sometimes. This is a three-player Scarlet Keys campaign, and I was the main clue getter, kind of, maybe. I don't know. Sure. Scarlet Keys is a weird campaign itself in terms of what it asks you to do for clue getting. It doesn't really ask you to do all that much. You're focused more on the concealed mechanic. We had three players in this campaign, a Bob Jenkins, who mostly did support and played lots of items. That's why there's probably an unusual number of items here in this deck. This is at the end of the campaign. And then a Leo Anderson, who walked all the dogs. Ursula had lots of relics, and I know some people are kind of sour on her ability and her deck building, especially in higher player counts, but I don't get it. I think she's really good, and I think the extra action is not all that hard to come by, even in a larger number of players. I haven't really played her in four, but I've played her a lot in three, and I think she's great. So this deck was trying to do the normal investigate thing, but also try to get as many charges onto various assets as possible to use them. So you might notice right away a couple of off-color ones that are really, really interesting, and then one that's not so interesting but really good. I'll talk about that one first. This is the Jewel of Aureolus. This is an amazing card. Even with the taboo that says a symbol, it in the deck I played, there was no bless or curse. It really just the difference would be for the elder sign. But this can fuel a lot of cards. You can draw cards. I actually think the gain two resources is really darn good too, especially for playing all these assets that I tend to have in my decks, as well as the events. In the Scarlet Keys, we had tons of these symbols. At the end, I think you end up with two skulls, four cultists, and we went full betrayal, and that was four uh, of the elder things. So yeah, this definitely, since it can work on anyone, triggered all the time. It's so good. Getting this out pretty early, helped me out a lot, and Bob helping play it also really good. Now, the other thing that is here that is weird is this Eyes of Volusia. You can't see the picture here. That has the Blade of Yoth that is bonded with it, and this allows Ursula to fight maybe. And yeah, it has charges, and basically every charge that you spend is an extra damage and plus two skill value, and you can use your willpower. So I definitely use that instead of the one combat. She's got three, four with wit and green. It was no problem to pass tests. I didn't use this as much as I was hoping. I really wanted to use it more, but it didn't seem all that necessary in the Scarlet Keys. I'd love to try this in another more enemy heavy campaign like Feast of Hemlock Vale or maybe Forgotten Age. I think would be really cool. Obviously, thematic as well. And the Raven Quill was tagged with it. So I named Eyes of Illusia, and I had it attached, and it didn't take up slots. Had the cool after you use an ability, which could be either the parlay or the other thing, the fight on the Blade of Yoth, because it still sticks onto it when you flip over to the other side or swap it with the other one. Um, you could ready another asset. I did this way less than I thought I was going to do this. I thought I was going to use this to ready steady-handed, Jewel of Aureolus. Maybe that's about it. Pathfinder, perhaps. Though I added Pathfinder in at the very end. Should have come in earlier, honestly. Yeah. So this was cool just to get the extra abilities, and I really wanted to use the Ravenquill's exhaust to move a charge from something else onto the Blade of Yoth to keep fighting with it, but it just wasn't necessary. There just weren't enough enemies to use this enough. I think it was really good when bosses came out, but Scarlet Keys doesn't have that many bosses. It's just sort of a couple of scenarios where you need it, and it was really good. It's like I do the 4 damage, and in 4 player, or sorry, in 3 player, there wasn't much more that needed to come from other investigators. So it was good in a pinch, but the amount of XP that I threw into it probably didn't justify the Raven Quill itself. Although I liked not taking up any slots. That seems kind of nice. Cool idea. I'd like to try it again because I think it was neat. But really, the weird part, I think that I mean, I knew this was a strong card, but what really was way better was this empty vessel. And this is the one where it swaps if you have 3 charges on it with Wish Eater. And that, when you reveal one of those symbol tokens, it instead cancels the token, heal for 1 damage, 1 horror. Can we let's see if we can get this up on the screen as well, just so you, in case you're not familiar with this card, the Wish Eater version is just nuts. I mean, look at this thing. Now, how do you get the 3 charges on it so it flips, right? As Ursula, are you going to be defeating that many enemies? Let's go back to the deck. No. I have the Occult Lexicon, which theoretically could help. There was the Blade of Yoth itself. I almost never played the Occult Lexicon. Almost never. I just didn't have the time and didn't feel necessary. Honestly, I think this card is good, but not busted like I maybe previously thought. I'm a little sour on it. It's really good for a Seeker to do damage with it. It seems like, oh, 2 Teslas damage for 2 cards, 2 resources is not that big of a deal for a Seeker, and mostly true if you're building around it, but I don't think it's so overpowered. I think the level 3 version is a lot better because it gives you the extra card draw, and it's better if you're building around just a basic, I cycle through my deck and just play every card, kind of Harvey Walters style thing. In Ursula, it's not that great. I think the Grim Memoir was what I played for my hand slots all the time, and I don't think I ever really needed this. Okay, so how did I defeat enemies then to charge up the empty vessel? I didn't. I either, oh man. I mean, either I did defeat a few enemies, or I used this card, which is not Parallel Fates. This is actually a proxy for a new card in Drowned City, which I'll show you here. Yep, Correlate all its contents. I think this card is amazing. This was in the preview article way back in September, and holy cow, this ability to succeed at a skill test and place a charge or a secret, so charge in this case, onto the Wish Eater, and then it could be 2 if you succeed by exactly 1 or 3, and given that you can cancel a token and redraw, you can use Steady Hand to make this work. This is a fantastic card. I think that the charge part is otherwise hard to do in Seeker. You kind of have to look at off class for that with Mystic, but since Ursula doesn't get that, using her free investigate action for this, still getting Clue, charging something up was really strong. So you might also say that doesn't seem like enough. And you're right. Really where this popped off was the very last scenario in the Scarlet Keys. And here's a picture. Yes, I actually play in person sometimes. From my play area at the end of that scenario, which was just, we just breezed through it. After the first couple rounds of Congress of Keys, there's just so much time, and you don't need to get that many clues. So here's a pile of charges on the empty vessel, or sorry, on the Wish Eater. Where do those come from? Have you ever played with the Claret Knight before? This guy, as a conspirator ally that comes only in the last scenario, as well as another one if things go right, lets you move resources from your resource pool onto him, and then later exhaust him to move resources from him to an asset as secrets, charges, ammo, or whatever. And you just dumped a bunch of it onto the Wish Eater, and man, you can just cancel all the tokens. I don't love cheesing things like this, but it was a fun interaction, so there you go. You can't use it and the jewel at the same time because you're canceling the token altogether, so it doesn't count as it being revealed anymore. So I think, yeah, it's when you reveal. So that isn't a great combo, but sometimes you can pass the test anyway. But in that scenario where the symbol tokens are nasty and they're pretty big modifiers, that was just the thing to do. And I didn't really die. I mean, it was you're kind of immortal with this many charges on the Witch Eater, and you have to keep charges on it, right? So, um, yeah, you just don't let it ever go below one, otherwise it flips back. You can see the decorated skulls in here too, for kind of the same reason I was talking about with um, moving things around. I sometimes this Claret Knight was a kind of replacement for the Eldritch Sophist. That's the guy's name, I think. Yep. Was kind of also here for that to move charges from one thing to another, and the decorated skull. I never used the ability on it to draw cards or resources, maybe once, but it's really just there for a battery. Otherwise, the deck is pretty lean. There's a lot of skills in here, trying to draw through and get through all the cards, but um, honestly, it went super well. The only scenario we had trouble with was playing on thin ice, where we started the scenario with 6 Doom on the agenda, so we just couldn't do everything. My decks tend to be a bit slow. You can see here that I never upgraded Deduction, and in 3-player that seems nuts. But the reason why is because Scarlet Keys doesn't actually have that much clue getting to do. The last scenario, I mean, even I think you only need to get in 3-player like 18 clues. That's it over like 20 rounds. So Ursula's movement and clue getting was enough. We got some other clues for the other investigators. A lot of things you do aren't clue getting, and everyone can contribute to exposing the concealed cards. So it's not necessary to just go all out on clue getting for your main clue getter. I mean, I think that's sort of a thing about this game, that people totally overestimate the requirements that campaigns have. If you want to just like blow the campaign out of the water, yeah, like um, leaning into extra clue getting is good, and it probably protects you from things going badly. But we finished the scenario with like 7 Doom left, so it, yeah. All right. I like Ursula. Again, I don't really get the oh no, she doesn't have relics, because these are super interesting, good relics for her. There's others in our off class. I could even have done some synergy stuff here. I think I originally had Moonstone. That's a red one. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, with 3-player, I had no problem moving every turn. Um, you just do that. That's how you get your extra actions. You have to pass the test still, which makes her not as good as Rex, but kind of similar idea, and with a lot more other interesting deck building. Okay, that's enough of Ursula. That's like 10 minutes of Ursula, but I just finished that deck, and it was such a fun time. I think it was a great team, and we did well. Okay, next one here is a Kaimani Jones deck that I played through Depths of Yoth, and this was the Ultimatum Challenge from a while ago. And this was a no Elder Sign, 2 auto fail, endless run. So I had to plan for playing a long time. The other one in this duo here was Preston Fairmont, and he mostly was supporting. He was getting clues, but a lot of the how do you survive the entire Mythos phase and whatnot was in that deck. So this deck instead has a lot of juice to basically get through and deal with all of the enemies, and get some clues every now and then too. So Kaimani's ability, they get this cool ability to discard enemies, right? So you can engage an exhausted enemy at your location, so they try to evade, and then you then attempt to evade again, adding your intellect to your agility, and then you discard them. So this is really good for Forgotten Age, because there's a lot of vengeance enemies. Now, that's not true in Depths of Yoth. There are no vengeance enemies, I believe. But getting rid of them, saving on actions, basically, is really good. So you can't see on the screen because it's down here, but Stealth 3 is basically the way to do this in Kaimani. Now, the other combo here is Cleaning Kit level 0 or 3. I only had XP for one level 3 card, and the Ornate Bow. So this has ammo on it, but you can only have one ammo on it. And instead of spending the extra action to knock another arrow, instead Cleaning Kit says we can spend supplies on here as if it were ammo on an asset that I control, like the Ornate Bow. So this is basically ignores this whole idea of limit 1 ammo. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe it should say uses 1 arrow or something. But here you go, 3 XP, 4 resources. It's in 2 hand slots. It's not cheap, but it's really, really good to be fighting at 7 and do 3 damage. And all you need to worry about is cycling through your deck and playing copies of Cleaning Kit and maybe load things up with emergency cash. I don't usually try to barrel through scenarios and just sort of bust things wide open. This is the strongest thing I think I can do in terms of what I enjoy and what I think is powerful. And I tested this quite a bit just to see if I could do it. And there's some odd choices in here. Like, I think at a certain point, if you have enough money, which the red clock, I mean, if you don't have the red clock, a lot of this stuff falls apart. This has so many resources and actions and movement that it basically fuels a lot of the other nonsense you can do. But once you do have this, and I think Kaimani has a pretty good shot at finding it, especially supported by Preston, the strongest things I think you can do in this game are have extra actions. Rogues have this notoriety, I think, from the past that they had extra actions but nothing to do with them. And when you play someone like Kaimani and their 5 agility base, this is not true anymore. So having things like thieves get to pick up clues, especially when you've got treacheries that say each investigator can only get 1 clue from each location, they can chip in. Making these cards fast when you use I'll take that. Swift Reflexes, which is not a staple card by any means, but when you suddenly can draw through your deck pretty quickly with 2 copies of Pickpocketing, spending resources on things like this is pretty good, especially to have a big explosive turn if you want to get rid of, say, Yig. So that's what a lot of this has. I wish I could put more XP into it, but we were playing standalone mode, 29 XP plus the 5 that Kaimani gets, and a Streetwise level 0. Wish it were the permanent one, but it was good enough for what I was trying to do. Yeah, I just had a lot of fun playing it. It's really strong, and I think Rogues, because of this kind of output, dirty fighting, pickpocketing, lucky cigarette case, red clock, all those top end items you get make playing for a long time legitimately possible. If you haven't watched this one, go for it to see kind of what I'm talking about. If you think that this is not that good, it really, really is. Yeah, it needs the pieces, but look, make sure you find the pieces, that spend some time at the beginning or have other investigators help you to get all your pieces together. Like, I don't think we're living in the world anymore where every deck needs to be so self-sufficient. Like, outsource some of it to someone else's cards. Less fun in multiplayer, like more than one person. Easier to do in 2-handed solo because you're like, that can be the not fun deck or something. Although I think the Preston deck was fun too. And just make this have all the go juice. I mean, look, you put Bob, you put Sister Mary, you put Carson on a team, you start to understand that that's really good, and it can be fun to play that way too. I think the Black Market was in the other deck that helped quite a bit. Oh, I mean, here's the Preston deck. Like, there was stuff that was going on here, and yes, unironic Grimm's Fairy Tales that actually healed the whole way. Really good if you're playing for like 7 depth levels or whatever I did. But mostly it was pretty basic and just was there to get through the decks and help Kaimani have the biggest turns that they could. All right, let's move on. Speaking of Sister Mary, maybe you've seen this deck. This is the one that I played with Pax on his channel and Philian, and this was our stupid Moon Pendant run. I don't want to talk about it too much because you may have already seen this series, and if you haven't, you should. But it was a Dragon Pull deck that tried to put a bunch of stupid things into the arcane slots. And why was I doing that? Because we were playing Moon Pendants, and the star was my choice of tarot. And the stupid things I put into my arcane slots were things like Hunter's Armor, Summon Servitor to get a clue and have 4 soak. We eventually did Shield of Faith, which is neat, but I mean, it was a slow deck. You can see here I called it. Oh, you can't see that. I called it Please Help Me Draw Cards, because even with the one Stand Together and the 2 Glories, I was just like real slow to get through here. Even the Hunter's Armor has the Exhausted to draw 1 card. It's not the strongest Sister Mary deck you can ever build. I think it's just a fun, silly one, leaning into the idea that you can soak a bunch for everyone and for yourself, and pass a lot of treacheries with some good stats. Kind of wanted to use every stat, even the intellect, because you're increasing it to base 4 with the summon servitor. So I mean, I picked up a good number of clues here as the flex in the team, although I don't even know if we could consider ourselves like that kind of a team, because Pax was also kind of flexing. It was only that Trish, who's really good, was mostly getting clues. Not much more to say. I think the no skill cards is just the byproduct of having to throw a bunch of assets in to make the Moon Pendant tarot thing work. We had 6 Moon Pendants on the team. We wanted to see if like committing the tarots themselves were also going to help us pass skill tests. They did. So these are also kind of skill cards. But man, it was a fun deck to play because we were just having a good time. That sometimes you play something silly because it's a good time with your friends. Let's move on to another Mystic Guardian hybrid. This would be Diana. I did play this on the channel. This was Return to a Dunwich Legacy. I think that when I play the campaign play-alongs, which this was a part of, my decks are a lot more boring because I'm just struggling to get any kind of synergy. I also played, so you're noticing like more often we're getting 2 of every card and a fairly even balance of cards that actually do things compared to like a lot of weird combo pieces that I like to do. Anyway, I have played Diana before, and I've seen Diana played, but I didn't really like playing her, and I liked playing this one. It kind of came together in a way that I understood better. I think Diana is a very good investigator. She can be a little bit more boxed into this idea of canceling things, but like I never liked the idea of cancel for the sake of drawing a card, getting a resource, and powering yourself up. That just felt like a wasteful usage of a card. And I think I just needed to find better situations to play her in where that wasn't a big deal. And I think Dunwich was a good example of that. So she performed really well. I think someone in my comments said that she overperformed. I don't know. I think she can surprise a lot of people with what she can do. Throwing Alyssa Graham is probably not everyone's first choice for an ally, but when you're working with not much, it seems pretty good. You can investigate at 4, and especially in Dunwich, you can actually pass a lot. Perceptions were in here too. So just a bunch of good stuff. I think I could have put the arcane studies in earlier to make use of the intellect, but usually people play Diana to fight more because she's got the guardian stuff, and the only guardian things I threw in here were the dodge, the I've had worse, which was coming from a different cycle altogether, and safeguard. So she was Clover, and I think that worked just because Mystic cards are good. I mean, they're just good. No deny existence in here, so we were tanking all the horror, and that's okay. We have lots of horror we can take with all of these allies, and something happened here where we have 2 copies of Zebulon. That's an error from Arkham cards, so don't worry about that. All right, moving on to York. I think this one and maybe the next one are, no, not the next one. One a little bit later were some 3 or 4 player campaigns that I played on hard. These are fan campaigns. I don't usually play on hard. I do think that the fan campaigns are generally easier just because they try to be a little nicer to players on the tokens. So I don't mind playing on hard. I don't mind playing on hard in general. I think it does make your deck building a little bit different, and I think it's better with larger player counts. I find that 2 player on standard is still relatively challenging. I think 3 and 4 player on standard is a much easier experience and lets you be more have fun with creativity. But 2 player, you have to really think it through. I think even solo is maybe easier than 2 player sometimes. Is that a hot take? I've played solo twice this year. I'll play more in the future, but um, it's not that hard if you're trying to just win. It's harder if you think you're doing a janky deck. In 2 player, I think it's maybe it's not fair, but I guess I'm playing more fun janky decks just because, and it is harder to make those things happen. I think in 2 player because you're more guaranteed to find enemies or tough treacheries that turn, even if you didn't draw it. In solo, that's not the case. Anyway, back to York. This is a Will York deck. Um, and I also played this one through the Scarlet Keys, and there's some other uh, fan cards in there over on the right, but they didn't really do much, so let's not worry about that. There's so much experience in this deck. We were kind of cheesing the Scarlet Keys by doing all side scenarios, but we did play a couple of Scarlet Keys scenarios as well. We is a 4 player group, and this was the main fighter, and I played with 2 copies of Katana. You might say, what on earth am I thinking? Like, why would that be a good idea? This is not a good card, right? I've talked to so many people who have tried to make this card Katana work. Here it is, by the way. You get +2. If you succeed by exactly 2, you get 3 damage, or you use your agility. Why would you put this in York? There's not a good reason why. The only reason I could think of was that he has access to some good Guardian stuff and Scrapper, which is down here, which can help with the agility test if you want to. So, Lucky also can save you from a minus. Failing by 1 gets you actually to succeeding by 2 exactly, and then you do 3 damage. I've actually used that a few times in this campaign. Other than that, I was playing on a team with Jacqueline Fine, so that's another reason why I did it. I ran with this in 4 player as my main weapon. I honestly didn't play baseball bat that much, and you might say, crazy person, one main weapon in 4 player. Again, it was Scarlet Keys, at least for some of this. I'm here to tell you that you don't need to run a million weapons if you have some consistency of how you get damage out there that's not just your weapons. York is totally fine with recurring things like Beat Cop and Guard Dog. Guard Dog 2 is amazing, right? This is an amazing card. As well as things like Strong Arm, Vicious Blow, Overpower. You can get there. I didn't always start with Baseball Bat and Katana, but on a 4 player team, I had some help to find things. That's okay, because it lets me run some other nonsense here. So I kind of was trying to do the whole get attacked thing. You got On the Hunt. I had a few copies of that. The Bangle of Jinxes actually overperformed too. The +2 is really good because you can use it for anything. And on hard, you can make it work. Honestly, it was fine. Like, you can commit enough and spend some resources to make this work just fine. Wolf Mask is good. Geared Up was I was talked into Geared Up. I don't think it's the best thing to do, but there's a fun interaction with At a Crossroads where you draw this in your opening hand and you get the 3 cards without really losing an action because you don't have any actions to lose. So that's cool. Other than that, like, it was good. Like, we did perfectly fine. This seems like it shouldn't be able to do enough through, I don't know, 7 or 8 scenarios, but it does. You'd be surprised. More consistency across the team to help you find your cards really does it for you, I think. Can't say that enough. All right. This deck was the sealed deck that I played on Justin from Playing Board Games channel. So this is a weird deck. It's weird saying that this was one of my favorite decks to play. Mostly it was because it made me have to think about a lot. Instead of just doing the normal, I commit everything, Winifred, use Lucky Cigarette Case, use my ability all the time. This was a sealed deck, so I had a random number of I had random like 50s level 0 cards and like, no, I think it was 70 level 0 cards and 50 upgraded cards. So the upgrade pool you can see here is what I had to pick from. And it really made me go into the events. It was hard to play this. It was not like I crushed it. It was a weird Winifred deck because you just could not use her ability to be card positive. There was no pickpocketing here. There's no Lucky Surek case. The Crystallizer is about the best I could do. Upgraded weapons were few and far between. The best thing was Leo DeLuca, really. That's how bad it is. You're spending an action to draw a card because there's no other way. Look at the skills I was forced to use. I had a few more earlier. I think I dumped them because they just weren't that good. But like we have one of the basic skills from the core set that replace themselves, which is really helpful for Winifred's ability, and it's Guts. We won. We won the campaign. This was Edge of the Earth. It helps that the Charlie Kane deck was like normal, but I felt like I was doing something because of dirty fighting, because I could evade, pass a test, fight, use my hard knocks, crafty, recur some of these events. Double double early was really good. But it really made me think about how to play the game and which cards are really important. When people say, when you're playing Winifred and you're not committing 2 cards every single skill test, you're doing it wrong. I get it. I understand what they're saying. But the reality is you can't always do that. You can if you are building into drawing extra cards. You are not just simply drawing cards with her ability because you are card negative at that point. Those cards that you commit on a skill test have to come back to hand with your Elder Sign or draw you into more cards with pickpocketing, etc. Otherwise, you're running a very slow Winifred deck who, when she draws with her ability, gets a Tekalili half the time. I know I sound like I'm ragging on this this playthrough because it was tough, but I think that's what makes it fun to really figure out how can I get the most out of my limited options. And sometimes it was playing You Owe Me One to grab something from Justin that would help me get through the deck, like a Lucky Surek case. Yeah. All right. That's it about this one. It was a fun time. It was so cool. You go watch the whole playthrough on Justin's channel and you'll see what happened. But man, it was fun to play a deck where you're playing cards you don't usually think about and see how much value you can get. You're seeing a lot of rogue cards here. I know there's a lot of rogue that I play because I think it's a great class. And look, here's another one. This one I played with Pax on my channel, and this is like one of the strongest decks I've played, and it still has crazy things like Persuasion in it. This is a parallel Monterey Jack deck with a lot of weird relics in it, some charms, and we played through Return to the Forgotten Age on a CPA, so a limited card pool. We were just playing with the preview cards from Hemlock and Return to the Forgotten Age and the starter decks in the core set. I mean, it's a good number of cards, really, but we're doing some weird stuff here. But I've never felt so powerful in a CPA. It you can go watch it. It was a fun time because there was a lot of really interesting, well, a lot of interesting play patterns that you don't normally see in investigators playing through the Forgotten Age. But I got to check out these neat parlay events. I mean, I think they were pretty good. Grift with Monterey Jack was really fun. There was one time where I got 10 resources out of that thing. I just had the most fun in that playthrough. Again, because I was playing with PAX, I think that helps a lot. But just like, I don't want to say I was styling on the game because we weren't, but some fancy play makes for some good times. I'll move on. This is an Akachi deck that I was also kind of rocking the Decorated Skull Empty Vessel thing in other decks this year. This was, I think, the best version. This one was through Feast of Hemlock Vale, and it was on my channel. This is way too asset heavy now that I look back on it. Dragon Pull, again, because I like the card. What to say? It did a lot. And I think I was just more impressed by the Decorated Skull, Empty Vessel combo than I thought going in. The Living Ink, I think, made it helpful too, right? To fill out that Dragon Pulse slots. I've played Akachi before and I like her, but this is the first time that I really felt like I was doing something that was unique to Akachi. Dragon Pull with a lot of cool spells here with you want extra damage. So you're saving on those charges, which admittedly you have extras of, by sometimes fighting with a melee weapon. In two player, I think that makes a lot of sense. You need to conserve some of those charges for the bigger enemies. And there's so many of them in Hemlock Vale. So a lot of XP here, which is nuts, right? So this is arcane research. I assume I have in the thick of it. I'm not sure. I probably did, but didn't mark it here. But regardless, that's a lot of XP. I don't know how I pulled that off. All right. But I think this was just a lot of fun to play, even just the normal Mystic deck with a little bit of variety in. I played Decorated Skull in a Kohaku deck this year as well, and I've just been impressed by the card. I think it's good economy. Would have been better as the Jewel. Maybe. Maybe. I think the Jewel is better in higher player counts. And Decorated Skull, I can see. I mean, this seems like it should be better in higher player counts too, but I don't know. I mean, they're both really good. They're just a little bit different of a card. This one makes you spend some actions, but you get a lot out of it at once, so it's good for burst. Jewel, not as good because it only gets you the one card or two resources, but you probably can do that enough and save yourself actions where it's also very good. All right. I know I'm going through the last ones a little bit more quickly because I don't want this to be a very, very long video. And I'm running out of some cool things to say at the end, but I would like to at least share as the last one here, the original Skids deck. This is not the one that you saw for the playthrough, the solo playthrough, but it was what inspired me to play Skids again solo. This was also on hard difficulty level on a fan campaign, and it was quite good. Now, I admit that I was on a 3-player team with a Vincent Lee that was better and a Min that was also very good. So it wasn't like I was trying to do everything here, but I signed up to be the main fighter. And again, you see one one item here, one weapon, and it's level 2 butterfly swords. It seems crazy. Like, how is that enough? Looking back on it, I also think it's probably not enough. I could have had a second one, but I never had a problem. I found it. I got there. And if we didn't find it, we did other things like evade or use sweeping kick or let another member of the team deal with a few enemies. But at a certain point, I added this lockpicks in because I felt like I had nothing to do as the fighter. I added this in because I said, you know what? I can spend some time getting clues. I'm Skids. I can add my 3 to my 4, use my Moxie to pump that up a bit, use Well Prepared or something, and we can pass some tests. I also had Copycat because Min had deduction level 2, and you commit this and you get even more clues. So I was, getting a good number of clues every scenario towards the end as well. We've got the Underworld Market. I think that's part of why, there's no weapons in there, right? But that's part of why this worked out because you could put a lot of, this is actually before all the Hemlock Vale stuff came out, by the way. Only thing from Hemlock Vale that I had seen to this point was, the Wolf Mask, right? And what's the other one? We had False Surrender in here at the beginning to try to put the butterfly swords out for free and get a fight off of that. That was kind of neat. But I thought that I'll take that as just better. So yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem like the best deck. It's just looking on paper and comparing it to other things that you've seen. How could it be good? How could this be main fighter? I mean, again, I wasn't doing every single point of damage, because I don't play that way. I don't think that one person, one player in the game needs to handle everything. But it was good enough. Didn't die, got tons of resources, chipped into all kinds of scenario tests. surprisingly good. And this is what made me say, I bet I can make a skids deck that does things well in solo, because I felt like by the end of this campaign, I had enough that I could get clues on top of what I was showing up for. Oh, I kind of forgot. Like the other part that makes the butterfly swords really good here is the reliable. Like you put 2 on here and you're testing at like 14 or something. It was nuts. It was kind of crazy. So this is the tail end of 2023, and we finished the campaign into 2024. So that's why I get to include on this list. But if you are thinking about a skids deck, try something like this out. It actually works pretty well. I think with the more experience that you have, not in deck building, but in piloting and playing the game, it makes playing weird decks like this not so scary or ineffective. Someone in the comments once told me that my deck building, looking at a list like this, gives them anxiety because it doesn't look like a neat. Let's see, what's the neatest one that I have in here? Probably the Diana deck or the York deck. Yeah, here's York. Like this is like pretty safe, right? And the Diana deck. Let's go back to that one. Also feels like there's 2 of everything, a pretty good balance. It was also good, right? But the more I play, the more I want to play things like this. The Ursula deck that has a bunch of random stuff in it, but gets there because there's enough skill cards with ancestral knowledge and other ways to pass tests that it's fine. You get there. The steady hand was super good here to heal, the horror off the panic. I don't know. I mean, curious to hear what you guys think of these decks, but also what you played this year that you thought was fun and interesting. And the more that you play the game, what have you learned about what works and what doesn't? I think it's important to take the right lesson. I've had a video about learning the right lesson about decks or about campaigns on the channel, and you might want to check that out too. But I think that if you play the game a lot and you want to change things up a bit, you will be surprised at how functional piles of cards can be if you have a plan, an idea that you're just going to make happen. I would play this one a little bit differently through a different campaign, the Ursula deck here, and make it work differently because things weren't perfect. But it's only because, but we won and we really crushed it. So the kind of fun interactions that I thought would be better actually weren't necessary. And I bet you that a lot of playthroughs that people have with a really strong deck find something similar, that they didn't need to go super hard on something. And they may or may not have left something out to its detriment. So that's it for me. I hope that you've had a good 2024, and we'll play lots of Arkham next year in 2025. We're going to be getting a new campaign pretty soon, probably March-ish, and new player cards in February. We've got lots of new spoiler cards coming out. I've got one myself on January the 5th. That would be Sunday, January 5th, to check out here on the channel. I've got two cards, actually. So I'll have to see you then.